I wanted to spend this morning talking about 1 Corinthians 1:25. And 1 Corinthians 1:25 says this, "Because the foolishness of God is wiser than men, and the weakness of God is stronger than men." Paul wrote this to the Corinthians. Now the Corinthians were part of a culture that exalted learning, that exalted reason, that exalted knowledge. They felt like if we could just talk about something, if we could just reason through something, we'll come to a conclusion. If we can sit down and talk about it rationally, we can come to a conclusion. If we can look at it and measure it and fix it, we can come to a consensus. And doesn't that kind of sound like stuff we believe? Doesn't that kind of sound like the way we are? I mean, we like the idea of having our math written down for us so that we can see exactly how it works. We like to be able to listen to a wonderful orator, and they make a great argument for something, a logical argument for something, and it makes us feel good because we can see, I can see what they're saying. I can see the relationship between point A to point B, which brings us to a principle. And the principle is that men, us basically, not just men in general, but us, we want to reason out the scheme of redemption. We want to reason out the scheme of redemption in such a way that once the theory is well fixed in our mind, once we have the thought in our mind that the scheme of redemption works one way or the other, it is exceedingly difficult to convince us of something new. And it's even more difficult sometimes to present the truth of the gospel. Once we have that idea fixed, so difficult, so fixed, so cemented, so nailed down in our mind, we think, why should I ever move? Michael Shanks is an author who recently wrote a book called Muscle in the Shoulder. And it's his journey of going from denominationalism to the church. And one of the things he talks about is the fact that it's so difficult to believe the truth that you've only heard once as opposed to the lie that you've heard 1,000 times. That lie that you hear 1,000 times makes more sense. That lie that you've heard 1,000 times is so much more convincing than the truth you've only heard one time. You turn over to 1 Corinthians. In 1 Corinthians 1:26-31, it actually says there, "For you see your calling, brethren, that not many wise according to the flesh, not many mighty, not many noble are called. But God has chosen the foolish things of this world to put to shame the wise. And God has chosen the weak things of the world to put to shame the things which are mighty. And the base things of the world and the things which are despised God has chosen, and the things which are not, to bring to nothing the things that are, that no flesh should glory in his presence. But of him you are in Christ Jesus, who became for us wisdom from God, and righteousness, and sanctification, and redemption, that as it is written, he who glories, let him glory in the Lord." You know, it can truly be said that in light of the scheme of redemption, the gospel, the plan of salvation, is not based on any premise laid down by men. In fact, quite far from it. If you go back into the Old Testament and you look at Isaiah 55:8-9, there it says, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, nor are my ways your ways, says the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts your thoughts." God laid out the scheme of redemption. God laid out the plan of salvation. Even though we like to put our finger in the pudding, so to speak. It's not our pudding to stir. It's not for us to say, I want this or I want that. We must understand that salvation is a matter of faith, absolutely a matter of faith. That I have to have faith in God who gave me the plan of salvation. And if I can't keep that in sight, then my efforts, no matter how much I try, will never amount to a hill of beans. And I want to talk to you about this principle from three different areas, three different examples. If you go back in the Old Testament and you go back to 2 Kings 5, in 2 Kings 5, you find there the story of a great man, a man of valor, a man of courage, a man of action. You find the story of Naaman. And it says there in 2 Kings 5:1, now Naaman, commander of the army of the king of Syria, was a great and honorable man in the eyes of his master. And because of him, the Lord had given victory to Syria. Here is Naaman, not a Jew, a Syrian, whom the Lord uses to give victory to his master, the king of Syria. And this man, he was mighty and he was valorous. But it also says he was a leper. I know we talk about leprosy, but you know, leprosy, of all the diseases, especially at this time and place in the world, leprosy was terrible. Leprosy is something that disfigures you. I mean, you can have a back. You can fall down and hurt your shoulder. And that doesn't necessarily disfigure you. You can break your leg and have to have it set, and that doesn't necessarily disfigure you. But a disease that eats off your fingers, eats off your ears, eats off your nose, can eventually eat off your eyelids. You end up with these great whelps all over you. Leprosy is a terrible, terrible disease. And he had it. He had it. Great man, valorous man, a tool of God. Now it says there, right? God used this man. A tool of God. Had the worst disease known to mankind at the time. The worst thing you could have. At some point, he must have come across a band of Israelites, and he must have taken them captive because he had a servant girl in his household. The Bible says it's a servant girl. And she says, oh, that my Lord, that my master, oh Lord, that my master might go to Israel, where there's a great man of God, and he could cure you, basically. She says, this young girl, here's somebody who was ate up with leprosy. I don't know if he was ate up, but had leprosy. And one of his servants says, I wish you were in Israel. I really do. Because we have a man there who could fix it for you. It's like throwing a dying man a life preserver. It's like throwing him out a lifesaver. Here, we can fix you. So Naaman, what does Naaman do? Naaman does what I would do, right? He goes to the king. He says, I want to go to Israel because I hear there's a man there who can fix me. There's a man there who can help me. So the king of Syria writes a letter to the king of Israel at the time. And Naaman goes with his horses, with his men, with a servant. He takes gold and gifts, we find out later. He goes with all this entourage. I mean, this is a mighty man. This is a 4-star general in our ideas. He goes to the king of Israel. And the king of Israel says, okay, what's this coming, right? You get a little nervous when you see your enemy showing up on the doorstep. He's got a letter for you. He pops open the letter. He reads it. And the king gets a little distraught. The king is like, how in the world? I can't cure this man. I can't affect this man's leprosy in any way, shape, or fashion. In fact, the king is so distraught, he figures it's just a way for the Syrian king to provoke him so that he might kill him. But the great prophet of God, Elisha, hears about it. And the great prophet of God, Elisha, sends to the king and says, if you'll send Naaman to my house, I'll fix him. Naaman's on the road. Naaman's happy. Naaman wants to be fixed. So he goes to the house of Elisha. He knocks on the door. And Elijah's servant answers the door. Servant. Not the man himself. The servant. And the servant says, basically, my master Elisha says If you will go dip in the Jordan River 7 times, you will be clean. Thank you very much. Close the door. Here's Naaman, mighty man of valor. We basically know the story from here. Most everybody basically knows the story from here. But look what Naaman said. In 2 Kings 5:11, Naaman says, but Naaman became furious. Talk about someone who couldn't hold his temper. Here's a man who carries a sword and can't control his temper. Became furious. And he went away and he said, indeed, I said to myself, he will surely come out to me and stand and call on the name of the Lord his God and wave his hand over the place and heal the leprosy. I thought to myself, I said to myself, I thought. Naaman knew. Naaman went there with an expectation. Naaman said to himself, I know how it's going to happen. I know the best way. And yet that's not what he heard. That's not what he heard. He didn't hear what he wanted to hear when he came to Naaman for his healing, or when he came to Elisha for his healing. He did not hear what he wanted. He did not hear what he thought. And then he starts to do what we all start to do when we don't get our way. We start to equivocate. Are not the Abana and the Pharpar, the rivers of Damascus, better than all the waters of Israel? Could I not wash in them and be clean? Why can't I go back to my hometown and be clean? Why can I not go back to these other rivers which are so much better than your nasty, filthy Jordan River and dip in them? Why can I not go there and be clean? I thought. And then he equivocates. Why can't I make it my own way, is basically what he's saying. And of course we know the response of the servant. The servant is, if he had told you to do some great thing, you'd have been there. If he had said you must go out and kill 30 lions, you would have been there. If he said you must go out there and climb the highest mountain and bring me back the flour from the very top of it, you'd have been there. If he said you must rescue some damsel in distress, you'd have been there. And yet all he's saying is dip in the water. Dip in the water. Now suppose you have leprosy. You or I have leprosy. And you go to a doctor here in town and he looks at you and he says, well, of course, I can diagnose you. You have Hansen's disease. That's what we call leprosy. You have Hansen's disease. The thing you need to do is go down here to Shoal Creek and dip in and out of it 2 or 3 times, and you'll be fine. What's your response? Shoal Creek? You want me to go dip in Shoal Creek? Are you nuts? Not only that, I got a friend who has a beautiful pool. Gorgeous pool. Chlorinated. Steps down into it. Smooth on the bottom. Not a bug in sight. Because that's what you're thinking. There's bugs in that creek. Why can't I dip in that water? Why do I have to go to Shoal Creek down here? And you say to the doctor, have you even stepped foot in Shoal Creek? I have never stepped foot in Shoal Creek. And yet, finally, Naaman decides to dip. Let me ask you this question. Do you think that any of the leprosy was gone when he came up that 6th time? Dip, 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 dip. And he comes up. You think any of the leprosy is gone? Is there a part of you that says to yourself, surely 6 times is enough? Got to be enough. I mean, you got to be wet by this time. I mean, it only takes 1 time down and up to be wet. But do you think before he dipped that 7th time, he could look on his arm and say, oh, the leprosy is still here? And yes, I think he could. Was the power in the water? Was there any power at all in the water that Naaman was dipping in? Was there any power in the dipping that Naaman was doing? No. We know the answer. That's not where the power is. The power is in God. The power is in God. Turn your Bible over to Joshua. In Joshua chapter 6, you have the children of Israel. They've been at a place called they've been coming, it's not Kadesh, that's the next example. But they've come across, and the children of Israel have come across, and they're facing the city of Jericho. Now most of us know the story of Jericho. Joshua goes around the city 6 times, or once a day for 6 days, then marches around 7 times the last day, right? That's what it says there in Joshua 6, beginning at verse 1. Now Jericho was securely shut up because the children of Israel went, and none went out, and none came in. Everything shut down. And the Lord said to Joshua, See, I have given Jericho into your hand, its king and the mighty men of valor. You shall march around the city, all you men of war. You shall go around the city once, and you shall do it every day for 6 days, basically. And the 7th day, 7 priests shall bear 7 trumpets of ram's horns before the ark. And on the 7th day you shall march around the city 7 times, and the priests shall blow the trumpets. And it shall come to pass when they make the long blast with the ram's horn, and when you hear the sound of the trumpet, that all the people shall shout with a great shout, and the wall of the city will fall down flat, and the people will go up, every man straight before him. So here they are. They've been told what to do. Now these people are not unfamiliar with the power of God. Not at all. Not even a little bit. I mean, these are the people, and they have just crossed. Remember now that the Jordan actually got parted. They crossed over on dry land out of the Jordan. Not only their moms and dads who were fed in the desert for 40 years. These people had just crossed over the Jordan on dry land. The people of Jericho are scared to death of them. Because they know. They see the children of Israel coming. Probably close to 1.5 million strong. A lot of people. 300,000 probably were fighting men. They got everything shut down. Now can you imagine Joshua going back and sitting there and thinking about it for just a minute and then saying to God, but you said it was a gift. Didn't you? Lord, didn't you say it was a gift? That's what I read. I mean, you go back here, just verse 2 of chapter 6, and the Lord said to Joshua, See, I have given Jericho into your hand. It's a gift. I've given it to you. And can you see Joshua saying, but Lord, you said it was a gift. Why do I have to walk around once a day for 6 days and then 7 times on the 7th day and blow the ram's horns? Everybody give a shout, stomp your feet, and run forward and kill everybody. Why have I got to do that? You said it was a gift. You said it was a gift, and if I have to work for it, that means it's no longer a gift, but it is a work that I have to do. And if it's a work I have to do, then I can boast about it. Oh, doesn't that sound familiar? Doesn't that sound like Ephesians 2, 8 and 9? It says, For by grace you have been saved, and that not of yourself, but it is a gift, not by works, lest any man should boast. It's a gift. And yet the Lord said, you're going to have to do something. Would any military man in his right mind ever attempt to take a city in this fashion? Dynamite we understand. Bombing we understand. Planes overhead we understand. Even biological warfare. In the Middle Ages, they'd take dead bodies and toss them back into cities. Biological warfare. That we understand. And yet, if a commander said to you and came to you and said, we're going to march around this 7 times, would you have followed him? Would you have gotten up? Or would you have said, please, how's that going to accomplish anything? Do you think on that 7th day when they've walked around 6 times, do you think even after they've walked the 7th circuit and everyone has stopped, that there's even a crack appearing in the wall? Do you think that after they blow the ram's horn, That one brick has trembled in its place? Or do you think they had to wait until everybody gave the shout? How much did they have to accomplish? Surely they had to accomplish every bit of what God told them to accomplish. Every bit. Was the power in the walking? Was the power in the ram's horn? Was the power in the shout? Surely not. Surely not. We know that's not true. That's not where the power is. The power is in God. Which brings us to a principle. We've already talked about one principle. One principle is men like to figure out the scheme of redemption for themselves. This principle says that God bestows blessings when man does what he's told. We saw that with Naaman. And now the principle again shows up with Joshua, the children of Israel, and Jericho. We are blessed when we do what we're told to do. And we all know that. I've got a dad. He told me what to do. And if I didn't do it, I was not blessed. In fact, I was completely opposite from the blessed. I was the de-blessed, in fact. But he told me what to do, and I did it, and I received what I was told. I received promise. Whatever it was he promised me. Finally, I want you to think about the children of Israel at Kadesh Barnea. This is in Numbers 21. And if you want to go to Numbers 21, you have the children of Israel at Kadesh Barnea. They've set out from a place called Mount Hor, and they're out there at Kadesh Barnea, and they're starting to grumble. Wait a minute, you're telling me that the children of Israel were grumbling? They were upset about where they were? That doesn't sound like surely that doesn't sound like the children of Israel I know. Because they were never grumbling. Oh, yes, they were. It says right there in Numbers 21:5, and the people spoke against God and against Moses. Why have you brought us out of Egypt to die in the wilderness? They said. For there's no food, there's no water, and our soul loathes this worthless bread. You brought us out here to die. You gave us this nasty stuff. You know what the name of manna was? You know what manna means? It means, what is this? What's the stuff? Manna. What is this? That's what it means. What is this stuff? You brought us out here to this place with no water, we hate this place. We hate it. And our soul loathes even the bread you provided. Surely that didn't make God happy. Because I know some of you can sympathize with somebody sitting in the back seat going, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? I'm tired of this. She's touching me. He's touching me. It's hot. I want to get out. I'm bored. And if that gets on your nerves, think about the people that you're providing everything for doing the same thing. So God sends among them fiery serpents. It just says fiery serpents. It doesn't tell us what kind of serpent. It just says fiery serpents. I don't know if they were actually burning or they were just red, but they bite people. And people begin to die. And because people, of course, they start saying, oh, we're sorry. Oops. Didn't mean to complain. Help us, Moses. Help us, Moses. Now what makes sense at this point? What makes sense for us to do at this point is to, I don't know, you remember the old Western movies? Somebody get bit by a snake, what do? You cut an X right across it and then you start sucking out the poison. So what would have made sense is Moses appoints some people with knives and have an ability to go around and start cutting people and sucking out the poison. Maybe to make a poultice. Some of you might not know what a poultice is. It's just a patch, stuff you put on it to draw the poison out. Maybe there's something we could drink that would cure us, that make the pain go away. Maybe if we could just drink enough that we can just make the pain go away, that'd be fine too. And all these things are a lot more rational than what God told Moses to do. Look what God told Moses to do in Numbers 21, 8 and 9. Then the Lord said to Moses, make a fiery serpent and set it on a pole. And then it shall be that everyone who is bitten, when he looks at it, shall live. So Moses made a bronze serpent and put it on a pole. So it was that if the serpent had bitten anyone, when he looked at the bronze serpent, he lived. Does that make any sense at all? You've been bitten by a snake. You know it's deadly. You go to the doctor. And the doctor says, oh, all you have to do to be well is go out here and look at my BMW. It's a nice one. And you're immediately going like this, can I get someone else over here, please? Can I get someone with a thought in their head, please? Because even though that's a nice BMW, that 600 series you got sitting out there, that's not going to cure me of a snake bite. And yet Moses sets it up in the middle of the camp. It says, whoever sees this, whoever looks at this serpent is going to live. Now let me ask you this question. Somebody's been bitten by that serpent, and they're at the point of death. They're laying in their tent. Do they still have to look at the serpent? Surely God won't condemn one person who can't get up out of their tent. They can't move, God. They can't get up. They're too sick to move, God. And yet, it says whoever looks on the serpent will be cured. Brings us to another principle, basically. No man has ever been blessed on account of his faith until that faith was rendered expressive in some action. You can't find anyone in the Bible who was ever blessed because of their faith, and that faith wasn't expressed somehow in some action. It can't be done. There's no one in there who did. Our faith is always expressed in action. Every time. And even though it might have been hard, even though it might have been wrong to us, you had to look on the serpent. You had to see the serpent. There's no exception. And I ask you one more time, where's the power? Where's the strength? Where's the power? Is it in the serpent? The bronze? Is it in the stomping of the feet? Is it in the water? Was it in the hem of the garment that the woman reached out and touched? She reached out and touched Jesus. Just if I can touch the hem of his garment, I know I'll be healed. Was that where the power was? No. That is not where the power is. It's not where the power is. For the foolishness of God is wiser than the wisdom of men, and the weakness of God is stronger than men. The foolishness of God is stronger. The foolishness of God is wiser. The gospel plan of salvation is no different. The plan of salvation that we talk about is no different. We are told what to do more than once in the Scripture. So many people will reach down and grab a hold of with their life, with a death grip, so to speak, on just one aspect of the plan of salvation and cry, here I am holding on to this. Surely this is plenty enough. Surely, Lord, you said I would be, it's a gift, Lord. Surely, Lord, there's better things to do with, surely there's better things than me to do than to go dipping in the water, Lord. And yet in 1 Corinthians 1:18 it says, for the message of the cross is foolish to those who are perishing, but to us who are being saved it is the power of God. And it's in the message of the cross that we find the command to be baptized. It's in the message of Christ on the cross that we find the message to be baptized. It's in the message of the death, burial, and resurrection of Christ that we also find the command to be baptized. It has to be there. And I say that because when we talk about Philip and the eunuch, all the Bible says is that Philip preached unto him Christ. And yet it's not long till he says, "See, here is water. What doth hindereth me from being baptized?" Someplace Philip must have mentioned baptism. He must have. He must have. I'm a nurse. I was trained as a nurse. For the last 20 years I've been a nurse. I can look up at a monitor, see a heartbeat, and say, this person's had a heart attack in the past. Or I can say, this person needs a little more potassium in them. I can look up at it and I can say, see right there? If we don't do something shortly, this is going to turn bad. I can look at it and say, maybe this person needs a little Alabama CPR. And I go, wake up. I can do these things because I've been trained to find relationships. I can do these things because I've been trained to understand how when one thing works, other thing. You know what makes no sense? Going into the water. Makes no sense. God, I want to be saved. I want to be the person you want me to be. I want to be who you want me to be in this lifetime. I want to spend my entire life with you. I want to spend my eternity with you. Please tell me how to get there. He who believes and is baptized shall be saved. I don't know about that one. Look, you said if I believe, right? John 3:16 surely says if I believe. All I got to do is believe. Jesus says, he who believes and is baptized shall be saved. But I thought it was supposed to be a gift. I thought you were giving this to me as a gift because you love me, right? What does it matter if I do something specific? Because it's a gift. He who believes and is baptized shall be saved. But it doesn't make any sense, God. There's no relationship. The closest you can say is, it talks about, it looks like you're mimicking the death, burial, and resurrection of Christ in baptism, under the water, up out of the water. It's foolishness. Surely you can save me without me getting wet. Surely God can do anything. God can do anything he wants to do. He can do anything. Surely he can save me without me getting wet. And yet again, it comes back. He who believes and is baptized shall be saved.